Party's over. You men can get moving.
What if I told you Clint Eastwood once teamed up with a nun who wasn't really a nun, and that their movie together became one of the strangest westerns Hollywood ever made? Two Mules for Sister Sara looks like your typical cowboy adventure: dust, dynamite, and Eastwood's squint. But behind the quiet gunfights and desert sunsets hides a film packed with bizarre choices, secret rewrites, and one of the oddest on-set dynamics of the entire 70s Western era. From mysterious injuries and miscast roles to a shocking truth about Sister Sara herself, these are 20 weird facts that will make you see this movie in a completely different light. At first glance, Two Mules for Sister Sara feels like just another dusty Western, the kind of movie where Clint Eastwood rides through the desert, a cigar clenched between his teeth, and barely says a word. But this one's different. Instead of the usual showdown in a small frontier town, the story unfolds during one of the strangest backdrops you could pick for a Western. The French intervention in Mexico, a war most viewers didn't even know happened. That's right. This isn't the Wild West at all. It's Mexico in the 1860s, where French troops were fighting Mexican rebels. That small detail changes everything. The cowboy in this story isn't a sheriff or outlaw, he's an American mercenary, wandering through someone else's war, and the nun he rescues from a group of attackers. She's traveling across a war-torn desert, supposedly on a holy mission. This twist immediately sets the tone. It's a Western, sure, but it's also part spy movie, part political drama, and part dark comedy. The world around them isn't about lawmen and bandits, it's about empires collapsing, armies switching sides, and two strangers who clearly aren't what they seem. Even the film's look hints at this hybrid identity. Director Don Siegel, who later made Dirty Harry, shot the entire movie in Mexico, far from Hollywood soundstages. The result? Real villages, real dust, and a heat that seeps right through the screen. You can almost feel how miserable the shoot must have been. The cast reportedly got sick from the local food and water, and the brutal sun made every costume unbearable. But that authenticity gives the film its edge. It feels rough, grimy, and strangely real. The story opens with a scene that instantly flips the usual Western script. Instead of a gunslinger saving a helpless woman, Eastwood's character, Hogan, rescues a nun who turns out to be tougher, smarter, and far more mysterious than he expects. Within minutes, the movie plays with your expectations. The Holy Sister smokes cigars, drinks whiskey, and curses under her breath. You know something's off, but you can't quite tell what. It's that sense of genre confusion that makes Two Mules for Sister Sara so fascinating. It borrows the dusty atmosphere of Eastwood's spaghetti westerns, but drops him into a story about deception, war, and identity. You're never sure whether you're watching a romance, a buddy adventure, or a twisted morality tale. And that confusion is exactly what keeps you watching, because just when you think you've figured out what kind of movie this is, it pulls you in another direction. The strange mix of tone didn't happen by accident either. The script was written by Bud Boetticher, a respected Western director known for tight, character-driven stories. But Boetticher's original version was meant to be much darker and with a completely different cast. The studio changed the leads, softened the tone, and added more humor, creating the weird blend we ended up with. It's part Boetticher grit, part Siegel cynicism, and part Hollywood compromise, a cocktail that shouldn't work but somehow does. By the time the first gunshots echo and the camera pans across the endless desert, you realize this isn't a story about good versus evil. It's about survival, secrets, and two people who need each other for reasons they're not ready to admit. But that odd mix of tones and rewrites was only the beginning, because what happened behind the scenes turned out to be even stranger than the story itself. If the movie's plot feels unusual, the production was even stranger. From the moment cameras started rolling, everything that could go wrong basically did. Filming took place deep in the Mexican desert, scorching heat by day, freezing nights, and no modern comforts. Clint Eastwood later joked that the toughest part wasn't the stunts or explosions, but simply trying to drink the water without getting sick. The crew wasn't so lucky. Almost everyone came down with food poisoning at some point, and the locals warned them not to eat anything they couldn't peel. Director Don Siegel powered through fevers, while some of the extras reportedly fainted mid-scene from dehydration. But even before production began, the project had drama written all over it. The original script came from Bud Boetischer, a legendary Western filmmaker known for lean, moral-driven stories like Ride Lonesome. His version of Two Mules for Sister Sara was rougher, darker, and more psychological, less buddy comedy, more sexual tension and betrayal. He later said he was furious at what Universal Pictures did to his story, claiming they ruined it with rewrites that turned it into a joke. Still, some of those rewrites gave the film its odd charm. Siegel added comedic beats and more dialogue between Eastwood and MacLaine, believing that constant banter would humanize the characters and keep audiences hooked. But he also knew how to push Eastwood's quiet, stoic image just far enough to make him unpredictable, a mercenary who smirks 1 second and lights dynamite the next. Even the title caused confusion. Siegel supposedly hated Two Mules for Sister Sara because it sounded silly, but the studio refused to change it. Ironically, that weird name ended up working. It made people curious before they even saw the poster. And speaking of posters, that led to another unexpected conflict that carried right into the next part of the story. When you put Clint Eastwood and Shirley MacLaine in a movie together, you'd expect sparks. And you'd be right, just not the romantic kind. MacLaine had just come off several major hits and was one of Hollywood's most outspoken actresses. Eastwood, meanwhile, was still riding high from his Man with No Name fame, but wanted to prove he could handle more complex roles. From day one, their working styles clashed. Siegel called MacLaine one of the most professional actors I've ever worked with, but privately admitted she didn't always take direction well, especially from men she didn't respect. Then came the issue of billing. In the film's opening credits, Shirley MacLaine's name appears before Eastwood's, a move that shocked fans who assumed the studio's rising cowboy would headline the show. But in the posters and marketing, Eastwood's face dominated every frame while MacLaine's name was tucked underneath. No one could figure out who was actually the star. And rumor has it the actors themselves weren't happy about it. On set, their dynamic mirrored the movie itself. Two people forced to rely on each other while constantly testing boundaries. Siegel reportedly described their chemistry as tense but electric, saying that friction was exactly what made their scenes pop. You can see it in the film. Every look, every sarcastic comment feels charged with real-life annoyance. It's not just acting, it's genuine. Interestingly, Eastwood later revealed he was drawn to the film precisely because of MacLaine. He said the character of Sister Sara wasn't like any woman in a Western before, and that her mix of charm, mystery, and mischief made the story unpredictable. Behind the camera, though, things were less charming. The crew had to juggle MacLaine's requests for privacy with Eastwood's minimalist approach. He'd show up, nail his lines, and disappear back to his trailer. The tension gave Siegel exactly what he needed. Two leads who didn't fully trust each other, trapped together in a story about mistrust. But as strange as the casting was, the characters themselves were even stranger. Because the woman dressed as a nun wasn't exactly who she claimed to be. By the time you think you've figured out Two Mules for Sister Sara, the movie pulls its first big trick. The nun Clint Eastwood rescues? Yeah, she's not exactly what she appears to be. Halfway through the film, it's revealed that Sister Sara isn't a sister at all. She's actually a former prostitute, pretending to be a nun to help Mexican revolutionaries sabotage French troops. It's a twist that would have been shocking in 1970, especially in a film that starts with her praying and clutching a crucifix. Suddenly, that cigar she puffs on and the whiskey she sneaks don't seem like quirks anymore. They're clues. This reveal flips the entire Western formula. Normally, Eastwood's the mysterious outlaw with a hidden past. But here, it's the woman who's been hiding something all along. And what's brilliant is that the movie never turns her into a victim. She's quick-witted, manipulative, and completely unbothered by the danger around her. She plays Eastwood's Hogan like a chess master, letting him think he's in control while quietly pulling the strings. For a Western, that kind of female lead was almost unheard of. Most women in the genre were damsels, school teachers, or love interests who faded into the background. Sister Sara breaks every one of those molds. She lies, fights, drinks, and even saves Hogan's life more than once. Clint Eastwood's character, Hogan, isn't spared the role reversal either. He's still the tough loner, but this time he's awkwardly forced to deal with emotions he can't define. He's drawn to Sara, but also suspicious of her, and the movie never lets him figure her out. Every time he tries to be the confident hero, she undercuts him with a single sarcastic line. This push and pull dynamic gives the film a weirdly modern feel, almost like a buddy cop story dressed as a Western. There's banter, tension, and just enough chemistry to make you wonder if they'll ever drop the act. But the real magic lies in how Siegel shoots it. Instead of big heroic poses, he frames Eastwood and MacLaine as equals two lost souls in a war that doesn't really belong to either of them. Their relationship isn't romantic or spiritual, it's survival. And that uneasy partnership becomes the backbone of the film. Yet even with such layered characters, Two Mules for Sister Sara had one more secret weapon that made it stand out. A sound you couldn't get out of your head. You can't talk about Two Mules for Sister Sara without mentioning Ennio Morricone's score, one of the weirdest and most brilliant soundtracks ever written for a Western. Morricone had already become famous for the Dollars trilogy, but here he decided to experiment. Instead of the sharp whistles and echoing guitars audiences expected, he built the score around animal sounds literally. There are brays, grunts, and shrill vocal effects woven into the music to mimic mules and human laughter. It's eerie, funny, and unsettling all at once, perfectly matching the film's off-kilter tone. The opening theme even layers whistling with a woman's voice that slips between singing and moaning, symbolizing the film's mix of innocence and deception. Critics at the time didn't know what to make of it, but today it's considered one of Morricone's most daring compositions. Visually, the movie looks nothing like the American westerns of the 60 seconds. Cinematographer Gabriel Figueroa, who'd worked with Mexican legends like Luis Buñuel, gave the film a rich, dreamlike color palette. Every frame feels painted deep blue skies, blood-red sunsets, and sharp shadows that make the desert look endless and haunted. One of the strangest sequences comes right at the start. A wordless montage of animals, lizards, vultures, and a spider crawling across a skull as the opening credits roll. It's surreal, symbolic, and a clear signal that this isn't a normal Western. Figueroa later said those images were meant to show the death of old morals and the birth of new ones. Even the lighting tells a story. Whenever Sister Sara prays or talks about faith, she's framed in harsh sunlight, too bright to feel pure. When she lies, the lighting softens, almost forgiving. It's subtle, but it turns every scene into a visual riddle about who's really being honest. Together, Morricone's sound design and Figueroa's cinematography create a world that feels both real and surreal, like a fever dream full of dust, danger, and secrets. It's the kind of atmosphere that makes you question what you're watching, and that's exactly what keeps you hooked. But all that artistry didn't stop the movie from having some truly bizarre moments that fans still talk about to this day. By this point, Two Mules for Sister Sara already feels strange, but some of the film's weirdest details don't come from the plot at all. They're buried in the production, the performances, and the tiny choices that make you wonder, how did that even happen? Let's start with the most infamous one, the arrow scene. About halfway through the movie, Eastwood's character Hogan gets shot clean through the shoulder with an arrow. Instead of removing it, Sister Sara helps him break off the shaft, pour gunpowder into the wound, and light it on fire to cauterize it. Yes, they literally blowtorch the wound shut. Even Eastwood later admitted the scene was borderline ridiculous, but somehow perfect for the film's tone. The funny part? Historically, the Yaqui tribe shown in the film didn't actually use arrows like that. The prop team just thought it looked cooler on camera. Then there's the drinking and swearing nun. Sister Sara casually downs whiskey, curses at soldiers, and pulls pranks on Hogan, all while wearing her habit. That might not seem like much today, but in 1970, it was scandalous. Catholic groups protested the film's release in certain countries, calling it sacrilegious. Universal's marketing department even tried to spin it as a comedy to diffuse the backlash. Another weird detail: there were 2 real mules on set, and both were absolute nightmares. The animals refused to move during takes, forcing Eastwood to drag them while staying in character. At one point, a mule reportedly kicked over a camera, ruining an entire day's shoot. The crew joked that the title "Two Mules for Sister Sara" wasn't about the animals at all, it was actually about Eastwood and MacLaine. The film also hides a bunch of continuity errors that fans still debate. In one scene, Hogan's cigar magically reappears after he throws it away. In another, Sister Sara's shoes vanish between cuts barefoot 1 second, back on the next. Even the timeline's a little hazy. No one ever explains how long their journey actually takes. But the most surprising trivia comes from the behind-the-scenes chemistry. Despite their tension, Eastwood later admitted he respected MacLaine's intelligence and wit, saying she wasn't afraid to challenge me. That tension became the movie's secret weapon. Every sarcastic exchange feels alive because it partly was. And maybe the strangest fact of all, the movie's twist ending where Sara's secret is revealed wasn't even in Boetticher's original script. It was added later by Siegel himself, who thought the audience needed a punchline. That last-minute rewrite completely changed the movie's tone, turning it from a straight Western into something far more unpredictable. By the time the dust settled, the film had turned into a weird hybrid half-comedy, half-moral riddle, and audiences didn't quite know what to make of it. But over time, that weirdness became its charm. Still, for a movie that was once brushed off as just another Clint Eastwood Western, its legacy has aged far better than anyone expected. When Two Mules for Sister Sara hit theaters in 1970, critics were confused. Some called it tonally uneven, others said it was bizarrely charming. But what no one realized then was that the movie was quietly breaking the Western apart and putting it back together again. At the box office, it did surprisingly well, earning close to $5 million in U.S. rentals, a strong return for a modest production. But its real success came later, as film historians started to look deeper. Beneath the gunfire and sarcasm, Two Mules for Sister Sara was actually tackling themes that most Westerns ignored: religion, hypocrisy, and gender power. Think about it, a fake nun and a cynical mercenary wandering through a war neither of them believes in. They lie, cheat, and manipulate their way toward a shared goal, but somehow you still root for them. It's a story about faith and survival, not morality. Don Siegel once said he saw the film as a battle between belief and pragmatism, and that subtle message is what gives it staying power. The political subtext runs deeper than people realize. Released at the height of the Vietnam War, it reflects the moral confusion of its time, soldiers questioning what they're fighting for, civilians disguising themselves just to survive. The French occupation of Mexico might seem distant, but it mirrored the chaos of 1970 America perfectly. Over the years, the movie has earned a quiet cult following. Modern critics have praised its bold female lead, its morally gray characters, and its willingness to make fun of its own genre. It's also become a favorite among Morricone fans, who see its score as one of his most experimental and underrated works. Even Quentin Tarantino once mentioned it as a key influence on his blend of humor and violence, saying it showed how you could make a Western that didn't take itself too seriously but still said something real. In the end, Two Mules for Sister Sara might not be the biggest Western Clint Eastwood ever made, but it's arguably one of the strangest, smartest, and most misunderstood. A movie that plays like a joke at first glance, then slowly reveals itself as a story about masks, morality, and the lies people tell to survive. And just like Sister Sara herself, it's not what it seems. But that wasn't the last surprise this film had in store, because decades later, a few new revelations would come out that made people see it in a whole new light. For decades, Two Mules for Sister Sara was treated like a quirky footnote in Clint Eastwood's career, a weird little western that didn't fit anywhere. But in the years since, strange new details have surfaced that make the film even more fascinating. One of the biggest surprises came from Eastwood himself. In interviews years later, he admitted he almost turned the movie down. He didn't like the script at first, calling it too chatty and too oddball. It was only after Don Siegel promised to tighten the dialogue and focus on the chemistry between the two leads that Eastwood signed on. That decision not only changed the film, it changed his career. Siegel went on to direct Eastwood again in Dirty Harry, and that partnership became legendary. Without Sister Sara, that connection might never have happened. Then there's the rumor about the original casting, and this one's wild. Before Shirley MacLaine landed the part, the role of Sister Sara was reportedly offered to Deborah Kerr, the iconic British actress from The King and I. But Kerr turned it down because she found the script immoral. Imagine how different the film would have been without MacLaine's sharp tongue and rebellious energy. It might have been just another straight-laced western instead of the strange, genre-bending movie we got. There's also an eerie coincidence that fans love to point out. The movie's title, Two Mules for Sister Sara, doesn't actually make sense unless you know the hidden joke. The two mules aren't the animals at all. They're Hogan and Sara themselves, stubborn, headstrong, and constantly dragging each other across the desert. It's the perfect metaphor for their relationship, hidden in plain sight. Even Morricone's bizarre score has a secret backstory. He originally composed the main theme for another Sergio Leone project that never got made. When Siegel heard it, he asked to use it, and Morricone reworked it specifically for Sister Sara, adding those mule-like brays as a cheeky inside joke. It's part of why the music feels both familiar and offbeat. It literally came from a different film universe. All these small details, the rejected script, the recast roles, the reused score, turned what should have been an ordinary western into a movie that feels almost mythic. It's messy, bold, and full of accidents that somehow landed perfectly. And maybe that's why it's still being talked about 50 years later. Because in a genre full of clean heroes and clear morals, Two Mules for Sister Sara is proudly imperfect, and that's what makes it unforgettable. So what's the real legacy of Two Mules for Sister Sara? It's not just a western, it's a story about deception, survival, and two people pretending to be something they're not, both on screen and off. Clint Eastwood plays a man who doesn't believe in anything but himself. Shirley MacLaine plays a woman who hides behind faith to survive. Together, they stumble through war, greed, and betrayal, and somehow end up finding a strange kind of respect for each other. That mix of cynicism and heart is what makes the movie timeless. It's also a reminder that some of the best films aren't perfect, they're unpredictable. They break rules, clash behind the scenes, and somehow stumble into greatness. Two Mules for Sister Sara shouldn't have worked, but it did precisely because it never tried to fit in. Next time you watch it, look beyond the gunfights and the desert sunsets. Listen to Morricone's offbeat score, watch how Sara's lies unravel, and notice how every mistake, every weird little detail, ends up meaning something. It's not just another dusty western. It's a story about masks, faith, and the strange human need to find connection in chaos. So maybe the real question isn't whether Sister Sara was lying. It's whether Hogan ever stopped pretending he didn't care. And that's the beauty of it. A film that started as a strange, uneven western became one of the most quietly powerful stories of its time. A reminder that sometimes the weird ones last the longest.